Okay, how to have a difficult conversation with parents. As I've said in a couple modules before, it is not fun, and it is, as I like to use, it is unpleasant, isn't it? This is not fun to have a difficult conversation with anybody. But there's some things you can do, right? Lauren, what's the first thing? As a program director, if they're getting ready to have a difficult conversation, do you want to know?
Yes. So usually what happens if there's a concern about a child, the teachers will let the program directors know so that we have time to observe and really collect the kind of data and concrete evidence for parents, because you don't want to go in there and say we have some concerns and not have the observational notes. So once that's been established, then we can call the parents and make an appointment for a conference, and so that we could share some of our observations. And a lot of times, the parents will concur that this is happening at home. So then that once that's been established, they're more open to the things that we are seeing in some of our suggestions. But we always try to have a plan.
Be prepared.
Yeah, established.
Allison, how important is empathy during these meetings?
It's huge. It is.
They don't want to feel judged.
They don't. They don't want to feel judged, and it's so important for them to feel heard, even though unfortunately they may not have a clue, and we have to recognize the fact that they don't, that they really are relying on us, our skills, our knowledge of children and their development, to come to the table with information like Lauren said, but without judgment. And then that really opens the door for really clear, honest communication with them, because then they'll start listening to you. But if they do feel judged in any way, they will shut down, and the conversation will actually stop.
And you were saying that sometimes we aren't clear in our communication, but also they hear a lot of times what they want to hear. And I think that's a big part of just
Human nature.
human
That's
nature.
human nature.
Yeah. And us just I feel like we have to talk to these parents more than once sometimes, 2 or 3 or 4 times for them to get the message.
Oh, you're right. And to piggyback about the empathy piece, one of the things that I find helpful when I'm talking to parents, especially when it's a really messy conversation, is to go back and restate. Validate their feelings, say, I really understand, how you're feeling or what you're going through, but go back and restate, what we're trying to get through. And I think one of the things is, and if they're really struggling, then it's really important to start asking questions.
Right.
Because once you start asking questions, then they recognize that you're not stuck on a position, that you're really trying to validate where they're coming from, and you're trying to have this dialogue.
Right. And they do, once again, and we've talked about this already, they go from Allison and then they call me. There's a family that's been talking to you. They called me yesterday. She said, and she addressed, I've already spoken to Allison about this, but she wants to hear it from somebody else. So we just have
Which
to.
tells you they don't like the answer.
I can't wait to hear this. Yeah, you're right, but that's exactly it. They don't like the answer, and that's a part of the triangulation with parents too, because they want to hear what they want to hear.
Well, there's some things you can do in difficult conversations that really help. And it's the same thing you do when you're holding someone accountable. You're clear on what your expectations are. You come up with a plan and a timetable. So if you call the parents and say, I want to schedule a meeting in the next couple of weeks, and you don't follow up, first of all, that's too long.
Right.
That's too long a period of time. It doesn't communicate a sense of urgency. If you say, I need to have something scheduled by tomorrow for a meeting in the next week, if I don't hear from you, I will give you a call. Is a lot clearer. And in the meetings, what happens that I have seen, and we're all guilty of this, you sit down, you have a meeting with the parent, you agree little Johnny needs probably to see some therapy, or we suggest it, right? Suggesting it, don't even bother if we're going to suggest it. We have to agree with the parent. Are you going to go seek a therapist? What's your timeline for doing this, and when are you going to check back? If we don't do all those things, we're part of the problem, right? Because it's no different than holding our peers accountable or ourselves accountable. If you don't have a plan and you don't have a timeline, you don't have anything, right? So that's in the difficult conversations, you've got to close the loop, right? You got to close the loop. But the tact is important, the messaging is important, and you can't avoid, you can't soft pedal around it. And that's something else. It's not fun to tell a parent the bad news, but you know what? Lauren, how many times have we gotten by with not eventually having to really come completely clean? I mean, what I mean by that is we try to give them the news tactfully, they don't hear it. We tell them again, they still don't hear it.
Yeah.
We finally say, look, don't you get it, blah. And they're like, well, why didn't you ever tell me this?
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
We always have, we eventually have these messy conversations. And by this time, you're probably really upset that why can't they hear me, right? They don't hear you because they don't know they need to hear you. In their life, again, they're back to conflict avoidance. They don't want to hear you. And so if you're not clear, but you got to have finesse
Yeah.
and you got to be tactful.
Right.
Exactly.
And that's an art.
Yes.
You have to know when they're open to hear what you have to say. You know,
Timing is really important
timing,
too.
and it's if they're in that angry moment or that very highly emotional, you just got me personally about my child.
Right.
There's an upset and there's a hurt and there's all
Right.
that thing that happens.
But
it's
validate
that
the-
emotional reaction. Right. Be
Validate-
empathetic to it.
And validate the feelings. I see you're upset.
And now I wrote down measured solution. Let's measure it out.
Mhm.
A measured solution with empathy behind it, but that there has to be a resolve.
Right.
And it may not be comfortable, and we can both be uncomfortable. And I've talked to them and said, I'm really this makes me uncomfortable, and you've seen me in conflict. I have to write things down in order for me to be clear, because I don't want to miss the points that are important.
Right.
Correct.
And I want you to hear them, but I want to emotionally understand that we're right here together. And it tends to soften someone right away. And they're like, okay, she's got me.
Yeah.
You may not like me, but we can be an equal, and we can both
Figure it out
figure it
together.
out together, and it's going to be uncomfortable.
Okay.
Done.
And I think
Perfect.
the teachers, a lot of times, it just depends on their tolerance level also. Oftentimes, when you have a child that's problematic, the teacher only makes a first time attempt in getting the program director or the head of school to understand this, but you do have to stay on top of us also because we're not in the classroom very often, so we don't get that direct impact on how that's affecting you and the children. So it's really important that you keep us in the loop also.
That gets back to advocating and following up. In life, whether here or anywhere, those that follow up have the most success.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.